Hi everyone, my name is Craig, and in today's video we are taking a look at the Sony RX100 Mark V. You might be thinking to yourself, the Mark V? Isn't it 2021? Aren't they on like the Mark 6 or Mark 7 by now? Yes, but bear with me here. I think that this camera still has a very unique place in 2021 and even looking forward into 2022. Today we're actually only going to focus on three specific categories. First, my favorite photo features, and then my favorite video features, and then we'll take a look at who is this camera for in 2021 and looking ahead to 2022. If you want a full review of this camera, you can definitely go online and search for a review, but this is not a full review. This is just my bias opinion, so I'll say that again. This is just what I think about this camera, and you can make your own determination. This is also coming from somebody who uses the Sony A1, the A7S III, and two Sony A7 IIIs. I feel like I know a little bit what I'm talking about, but hey, you make the determination for yourself and let me know in the comments down below. A quick note, all of the footage that you see in this video was shot on the Sony RX100. Yes, all of it. This talking head that you're watching right now, shot on the RX100. The only footage that is not shot on the RX100 is going to be anything that you see of the camera itself, so any of that B-roll footage. And I'm going to shoot that footage on the Sony A1, so you can see how this tiny little camera stacks up against Sony's flagship A1. Okay, let's dive right into my favorite photo features. First, this camera boasts a solid 20.1 megapixel 1-inch sensor. This is definitely enough megapixels for getting up close and personal for detail shots. Here are a few detail images I snagged at its minimum focusing distance. And as you can see, there's plenty of detail when I zoom in all the way to 200% or even more in Lightroom. 20 megapixels is also plenty to snag some amazing portraits of your friends and family. I went out by this lake and took some gorgeous photos of my wife, Macy, and posted them on my Instagram story, and they held up flawlessly. I'm sure those who follow me on Instagram thought I shot this with my Sony A1 or one of my A7 IIIs, because those are my primary photo cameras, but nope, this tiny little point-and-shoot camera is what took these awesome portraits. 20 megapixels is definitely plenty for a variety of purposes. Okay, next is the insane drive speed. This camera can shoot up to 24 frames per second in raw stills. Here are a few bursts that I did, and then I stitched them together in Premiere. I mean, look at this. I mean, it looks like video, except you have the capacity to edit the full resolution 20 megapixel stills at shutter speeds well over 1/50, which is what you would have to shoot at if you were shooting 24 frames per second video. It also rarely misses autofocus. The autofocus tracking on this camera is incredible, so you don't have to worry about missing focus. Just always make sure you put a fast enough SD card in your camera so it can keep up with the insane shooting speeds. Okay, the last photo feature I want to touch on is also a video feature, but it's the amazing lens that this camera holds. This camera is using the 24-70 equivalent Zeiss glass lens that's integrated onto the camera. Simply put, this lens produces a beautiful image. The Zeiss glass is the same glass that you'll find on the 24-70 f4 and then the 50 f1.4 Sony lenses that I actually use on a regular basis. The 24-70 range is just perfect for a variety of cases. A lot of times I shoot concerts, and the 24-70 is my favorite lens to use for concerts. And even for weddings too, I shoot a lot of weddings, and the 24-70 is just something I gravitate towards day after day. Something to consider is that in their updated models, they actually have a 24-200, so there's an insane amount of zoom range. So if you're looking for something that has a longer focal length, take a look at the RX100 Mark 6 and 7, but if 24-70 is good enough for you, then this camera will fit those needs. Okay, moving right along to my favorite video features, and first is practical resolutions. This camera shoots up to 1080p at 120 frames per second, as well as 4K 30 frames per second. These are the same resolutions that so many cameras over $1,500 have, including the beloved Sony A7 III that people just adored when it came out. For most people, this will be all that you need to create compelling content for years to come. 1080p is not going anywhere anytime soon, and you also have that 4K capabilities if you need to bump your resolution up to the 4K realm. Okay, the next video feature is their HFR, or their high frame rate recording options. Even though the main resolutions you shoot on are 1080p up to 120, you can actually shoot in 1080p in a couple other resolutions called their high frame rate settings. This actually might be my favorite feature of this camera, and it initially was the first reason why I decided to look into this camera. This allows for 240, 480, or 960 frames per second shooting. You can get some insanely slow motion shots with this camera. I will say some of the higher frame rates like 480 and 960 tend to break down if you don't have a ton of lighting, because you have to crank your shutter speed up so high so that doubles your frame rate. But if you have a good source of light, honestly, the footage looks pretty good. I'm gonna show you one of my favorite shots that I've taken here, which is of me putting up my drone, and you can actually see the individual blades spinning on the drone, and it's really incredible. I love this feature, and I cannot speak highly enough about what value this adds to the camera. Okay, next is the built-in ND filter. I think this is about a 4 or a 5 stop built-in ND, and they really were thinking about their video creators when they put this into their camera. Since this camera has a built-in lens that you can't remove, there's no ability to screw on filters on the front of it. So if it didn't come with built-in NDs, they would have put off a lot of video creators who wanted to use this to create their content. The built-in ND is a lifesaver when shooting outdoors and when you're wanting to shoot at proper frame rates and shutter speeds. Last but not least is the flip up screen. This thing adds so much value to the camera. This thing is also pretty bright, and I've had no trouble shooting outdoors with this camera and being able to see the screen in a variety of sunny environments. Here I am in my studio using it right now. I have no external monitor. I have no other setup besides just the camera. Flip up screen looking right at me, and I can see my settings, I can see my frame, and it's just a really important feature if you want to be able to film yourself easily and not require a bunch of setup. Okay, here's a quick insert shot that I'll throw in the video just so you guys can see the camera quality. We got a train going off in the background that's going wild, but I want you to hear what the camera quality, the built-in mic on this camera sounds like. Wifey in the background shooting B-roll on the A1. Okay, I want to wrap up this video by talking about who I think this camera is for. I think this camera is well suited for both your everyday hobbyist who loves outdoor sports, outdoor hiking, adventure stuff, and professional video production creators and photo takers. There are going to be those situations in which you can't take your big mirrorless cameras or your DSLRs or your cinema style cameras out on a hiking trip or a backpacking trip. This is where this camera really shines. This camera is small enough to fit in any pocket, any sweatshirt, any pocket in your backpack. I've actually used this on film sets before to film behind the scenes video. When I didn't want to take my production cameras off of their tripods, I grabbed this thing, and I did get some weird looks because they were looking at me like, why are you using this really small point and shoot camera? And listen, if somebody gives you crap for using a really tiny camera like this, just tell them. You hired me, you like my stuff, you obviously hired me because you think I'm good at what I do, so don't question me. This camera is amazing, it creates great content, so don't be afraid to bring it out on professional sets and use it. There's something so valuable about having access to a camera that is so small that can also meet your needs for vlogging, for cinematic B-roll, or even professional level portraits. The photos and videos of this camera are super easy to edit, and I can't think of a circumstance in which in the next 2 to 3 years that this camera will be obsolete due to technological advancements. I think this camera has everything you need in one small package to create incredible content for years to come. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to give it a like and also subscribe if you haven't already. Much love.